So there's a couple intentions with this yoga practice. The first one is to explore some yin postures that you can do at a wall, or if you have some wall space. So the main prop in this practice will be a little bit of clear wall here. So either find some wall space, maybe clear some wall space, or if that is not an option, you can always do yoga poses that don't require any wall space. Some other props that might be useful always are a couple of pillows, maybe a blanket, and a few books. The other intention of practice is to explore some inversion. Now, due to the nature of yin yoga, there's not a lot of inversions in the practice, but there are a few. So we'll try a couple of them in practice as well. So maybe cultivate your own personal intention for class. Gather up some props, maybe find some wall space, and then we'll get started. So today I'm starting off the yin sequence right off the bat with inversion known as dangling, better known as ragdoll pose, which is a simple standing forward fold. So you basically come to standing. Feet are comfortable width apart, so you might have to experiment for a while. What comfortable is for you? Maybe they're close together, maybe they're pretty wide. Knees are soft, and then you just lower yourself forward here. And we'll stay here for just a couple of minutes here. Now this is something that you can use a wall with, so for some of us this is maybe a disconcerting posture, maybe due to dizziness or blood pressure issues. And so if you want to take the balance of this posture out of the equation, you can get close enough to a wall so that you can kind of lean yourself up against the wall, and then allow your upper body to hang and relax. So your lower body is working here because it's keeping you upright. Although knees are soft, so they're not in pain. Back of your legs are not in pain. But your upper torso is trying to soften and relax. Arms can dangle here, or you can clasp opposite elbows. Maybe wiggle around for a moment. This is a little bit yang, but the idea is to just kind of loosen everything up so that it can soften. And then notice your breath. Notice how this feels, being upside down here. Right away, just notice the feelings. Notice the temperature of your skin. Notice how your inhales feel about this. Notice how your exhales move in your torso here. And we'll just stay here for a couple of minutes. Now, if this does not work for you and you would like to still do a forward fold, then slowly bring yourself out of ragdoll pose. Come to seated, legs out in front. Maybe sit up on a little bit of padding if the backs of your legs are tight, and you can come into the posture known as caterpillar pose. So caterpillar, just a simple seated forward fold. So same kind of anatomical idea with ragdoll. It's just that you're not in the standing inversion, and this maybe this feels a little bit more stable and a little bit safer to do this. Otherwise, 3 or 4 more nice slow breaths here in ragdoll, if you're staying here in ragdoll. And again, maybe arms are clasped, but you can just let your arms dangle. That's kind of the intent of this posture, is to just hang here. Maybe you could stay here longer, in which case you can pause the video and stay here in ragdoll as long as you want. For most of us, this gets pretty intense after about 3 minutes or so. So just one more breath here. And then when you're ready to come out of ragdoll, the easiest thing to do is bend your knees and slowly make your way all the way to the ground, maybe up on all fours. Come to tabletop, come to hands and knees, and then when you get to hands and knees, while you're here, maybe as a counter pose, maybe a few cats and cows. Now you already did a forward fold here, so maybe start off with the back bend, and then move into a forward bend, move into cat stretch, and just do 2 or 3 more of these cycles, just to kind of work out some of the strain that might have developed in that first yin posture. So at some point, you bring yourself back to a nice neutral spine. And then from here, we'll set up for the next yin posture. This is called Dragonfly at the wall. And so it's a wide-legged posture, and this is where we'll need the wall, and there'll be an alternative. You can always do regular dragonfly if this doesn't work for you. So first you have to get to the wall. Now you can either use a pillow or not use a pillow at the wall. You'll have to experiment to see which one works better for you. I'm going to place the pillow here. You might find that the pillow doesn't work for you. The next step is to get yourself so that you're lying on your back on the floor with your legs pointed up the wall here. So the easiest way to do that is to make your way sitting sideways next to the wall. And this might take a few attempts, 1 or 2 tries, but you kind of lie yourself back and roll your legs up the wall so that your hips end up in the middle of the mat or on the pillow here. It doesn't need to be exact here. You start out with, which is a pose which is known as legs up the wall. Now you can stay here, or come into dragonfly at the wall. And dragonfly at the wall is you start lowering each leg out to either side here. You just keep going until you find your stopping point. Your stopping point is different than mine. So maybe they don't go as far, or maybe your heels make it all the way to the ground. So you're adjusting this for how you're feeling. What's the tension, what's the traction that's running on the inside of the legs, and then depending on the construction of your anatomy. Legs might end up at different places. Maybe this is causing too much pain, in which case maybe regular dragonfly is a good idea. So we'll try to stay here for 3 minutes. But if this is already injurious or painful, maybe the idea is to slowly make your way out of this posture. Just come to seated and do regular dragonfly, which is a regular seated forward fold. Again, if you have a lot of tightness in your legs like I do, maybe sit up on a little bit of padding and then bring your legs out wide. Sit here with a nice straight spine, or if you wish, you can fold forward if this works better for you than dragonfly at the wall. If dragonfly at the wall is working for you, then stay there and hang out there for a few more minutes, paying attention to the physical sensations, also the mental and the emotional ones, and making sure they're all appropriate and within your edge, something that you notice and can feel, but not something that's creating pain or injury. Make sure everything is comfortable. If there's a lot of discomfort underneath your torso, notice I have a yoga mat and a blanket underneath me, just to make things a little bit more comfortable underneath my torso here. And then notice your breath. Arms are relaxed, shoulders released, head soft, face is soft. And if you're not feeling too much, maybe legs go out a little bit wider. If you're feeling not enough, then maybe they move in. So you're adjusting this to find your edge here. So that's the first principle of yin, is move your body into a posture. Find a place where it stops and where you start to feel something. Second principle is called stillness. Once you've found that shape that's appropriate for you, then you resolve, then you commit, then you create the intention to be still for a while, to stay. Now, there's a lot of exceptions to the stillness rule. If head and neck or extremities, like hands here, need to be moved around for comfort, you can do that here. If the position you're in was okay for a while, but is now creating pain, that's your cue to change the position, come out or modify. Or if you're not feeling anything at all, and you're just kind of like chilling here, then maybe move deeper into the posture. So these are all parts of the exceptions to stillness. And then the final principle of the yin practice is time. So time is what makes yin yin, is the time component. It's not the postures that we're doing. It's the idea that we find a posture that feels supported where we can relax our muscle fibers so that the tension and the pressure can go into the connective tissue system. And then we maintain that very light traction, that very light pressure for a certain period of time. In this case, a few minutes, anywhere from a minute to even up to 10 minutes, although here we're holding postures for roughly 2 or 3 minutes here. So just one more breath here. And then when you're ready, maybe slowly bring your legs back up to center. Maybe do one at a time. You can actually even use your hands to help. And then when you get them back up, this is called legs up the wall. We might revisit this posture during Shavasana, but for right now, you can just work out the stagnation that developed in your legs. So if you need to soften your knees for a while, do that. Or keep your legs relatively straight. You can point and flex your feet a few times just to bring some motion to this part of your body to work out the stagnation. So point, flex here. And then we're moving into the next yin posture. Next yin posture is a yin posture known as Eye of the Needle at the Wall. So you might have heard of Eye of the Needle before and even practiced it, but you can create a more intense version if you're at the wall. And you start out here in this basic legs up the wall posture. And then from here, you'll bend your left knee and take your left ankle and place the left ankle on the right thigh. Left knee is out wide. Now this might already generate a lot of sensation for you. If it does, this is where you stay. This is your Eye of the Needle pose. Maybe if you want to, you can take your hand and just kind of wing that left knee back and forth, just to kind of help open that left hip socket. This is the emphasis of this pose. Or the next stage is to bend the right knee and see if you can bring the right foot, bottom of the right foot to be on the wall here. See how intense that is. Maybe that brings up enough sensation and then you stay there. Or the next step is to just continue to bring this right foot down the wall as far as it goes until the sensations are pretty intense. What you would kind of like to do if you need a goal is to see if you can get this ankle kind of in line with the knee. I've got a pretty long shin, so if I do that, that gets pretty intense. The other thing is see how it feels to have your sacrum lift up off of the floor. Mine is lifted a little bit, and that's okay with me. So I'm going to leave it where I'm at, but if it's not okay with you and you want your lower hip on the floor, then you're going to have to back your torso away from the wall maybe a few inches until this settles back down. Otherwise, this is acceptable for you. This is where you stay. Or maybe doing this at the wall is just too intense, but you know the regular version of this pose away from the wall, where you're just holding your leg with your hand and using that to create the pressure. You can do the pose that way here. Otherwise, we'll stay here for about another minute and a half or so. And again, remember your intention. Notice your breath. Notice the sensations and make sure they're acceptable to you. And if they are, then all you have to do here is stay. So we're looking at a few of the inversions here. The way I have this posture set up, I'm actually technically inverted, although very, very slightly here. In the past, I've talked about things that are obvious, the sensations in our body. We're looking for the obvious sensations, the obvious physical sensations in our body, and maybe exploring the more subtle ones. You can do that in the night sky too. So in my yin classes, I sometimes like to point out the very, very bright and obvious stars of the northern sky because I live in the Northern Hemisphere. But since we're exploring going upside down in this yoga sequence, then it's maybe worthwhile to explore the very bright stars, constellations, and asterisms of the Southern Hemisphere. Oh yes, the south half of planet Earth. So if you live or venture down into the Southern Hemisphere, turns out you get to see a whole different sky. There's a whole different set of stars. And down there they have their own bright asterisms of stars. And the most famous, of course, of which is the Southern Cross. The Southern Cross is the Southern Hemisphere analogy to the Big Dipper and to the North Star of our northern sky. Not only is the Southern Cross bright and very distinct, you can also use it to find the South Celestial Pole, even though there's no bright star there. So it's a pretty important group of stars, and if you live down there, then you know, you probably see it every night. In fact, this time of year, the Southern Cross is high in the sky, so this is mid-May. So around 9 o'clock in the evening, Southern Cross is pretty much crossing the meridian, pretty much as high in the sky as it's going to get all year long here. Just one more breath here. And then when you're ready to come out of this eye of the needle pose. Slowly extend that right leg. And then slowly release and extend the left leg. And from here, you might want to work out the stagnation of that posture. So again, you can make little movements with the feet. You can bend the knees. You can just kind of swing the knees back and forth. Whatever you need to do to bring some relief to whatever was under tension or pressure. But we do have the other side of this posture to do, so we'll do it while we're here. So legs go back up the wall initially, and then bend the right knee. Bring the right heel on the left side. Maybe pause here and see if this is acceptable. If this is pressureful, this is already intense, then you don't have to go any farther here. Otherwise, you can experiment with winging this right knee back and forth. And then you can experiment if you'd like to go farther here. And going farther is bend the left knee and draw that left foot down onto the wall. See how that feels for a moment. If that's feeling okay, you stay here. Not feeling okay, then maybe you back that left foot off a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It can be somewhere between these 2 points. So you're finding your own spot here. Or if you're wanting something really intense, you can bring that foot down. I actually have to take my hands and pull that shin down to create enough pressure. And then I get to a point where, oh, this is pretty good pressure here. So now this is where I stay and just reside, trying to soften and let the pressure of the wall and the configuration of my legs do the work. So my muscles are soft here. I'm going to just stay. Maybe this is injurious for you. Maybe you want to do another kind of a hip opener, like maybe shoelace or just eye of the needle away from the wall here. So a couple more minutes that will stay in here. Now you don't have to stay here. Any of these postures get too intense, you give yourself permission to come out. That's the nature of yin. Yin is very allowing and accepting. There's no forcing, there's no pushing, there's no, I gotta do this. The idea is to simply stay and be and exist. So if you are staying and being in the Southern Hemisphere, you will eventually come to know these bright stars known as the Southern Cross. They're in a very beautiful spot in the night sky. They're right smack dab in the middle of the Milky Way. And they're made up of 4 bright stars. A 5th one that sometimes is represented when you see these stars represented on some national flags. So it's in the Australian flag, it's in the New Zealand flag, it's in the Brazilian flag, it's in a couple other flags here. And it's very, very bright. In fact, 2 of the stars, brighter than first magnitude. So the brightest star is the bottom of the cross. It's called Alpha Crucis. And this star is actually, as most stars are, it's a multiple star system. So it's made up mainly of 2 bright B-type supergiant stars, both more than 10 times more massive than the sun. They're about 320 light years from the Earth. And they're fairly young, these blue supergiant stars, about 10 to 15 million years old. And they make up what we see as that bright star. In fact, there's other stars. There's actually a third star. And that third star, there's also other stars there. I think it's made up of actually 6 different stars, even though most of the stars are these 2 bright blue supergiants that I just mentioned. The same is said for the second brightest star. So Beta Crucis is the star that's in kind of the left side of the cross as we view it. So our left, not its left here. And Beta Crucis, again, is a double star. It's double blue supergiant B-type stars, very young. In fact, they're actually related to the Alpha Crucis star. They're part of this association of stars that we believe all originated in the same spot and are moving in the same direction. And therefore, they're all of the same age. And see, these are some of the bigger and brighter stars that exist here. We're done with this posture. So just one more breath here. And then you can slowly bring that left leg back up. Release the right leg, extend it back up. You can stay here for a breath or make little movements to start to work out and notice the reverberation pressure from those 2 postures. So you continue to make little motions. Maybe when you're done with that, you just stay here and legs up the wall for about 2 or 3 more breaths or so. And then we can slowly begin to think about coming out here. But maybe one more breath here. And then bend your knees very slowly, gently roll over to one side. Maybe stay here for a while. You don't have to be fast. So there's no point in moving quickly in a yin practice. Everything can be slow and deliberate. So you can just stay here on your side for a few breaths. Just gather your bearings here. And then when you do feel ready, very slowly press yourself up to a seat or to on all fours here. So the next yin posture is known as Sphinx septal wall. So it's a variation of normal Sphinx. If you prefer to do normal Sphinx, you can do that here. But to do Sphinx up the wall is we're going to bend our knees and try to get our shins up against the wall. So you kind of go on hands and knees, make your way down onto your belly, and as you do so, work your legs, your knees, bend your knees and bring your shins, your tops of your feet up against the wall, about hip width or comfortable distance apart. And then maybe keep working yourself back until you can kind of feel the tops of your shins, your knees, up against the floorboard of the wall here. And then once you're there, bring your elbows underneath your torso. Shoulder width apart. You can clasp your elbows to figure out what torso width is here. There, and then just stay here in Sphinx. So do whatever you want to with your hands. They can be in Sphinx hands, they can clasp your hands, you can rest your head in your hands, or you can clasp your elbows here. If this doesn't work for you, if this creates too much pain, you can do regular Sphinx. So just bring yourself forward, bring your legs flat on the floor, comfortable width apart. You can do a regular version of Sphinx here. Now, if you don't want to hold your head up, and you don't like hanging your head here in Sphinx, then some books might be useful. So you can bring some books, make a tower with your books, high enough to rest your head on the books here. So you make a little stack of books, and then you can just rest your forehead on the books so that you have something to support your head. Otherwise you can hold your head up, but the idea is the rest of your torso is trying to relax and stay here in Sphinx. So we'll be here for about 2.5 more minutes or so in Sphinx. So the second brightest star in the Southern Cross asterism is, it's Beta Crucis, but it's known by a different name. It's known by the name Mimosa. And we believe it was actually named that after the flower, mimosa. So that's its more formal name, even though it's known as Beta Crucis because it's the second brightest star in the Southern Cross constellation. The third brightest star is Delta Crucis, which is the other side of the cross arm of the cross. It is a single B giant star, about 10 solar masses. So these are all big blue supergiant stars that are about 10 solar masses or larger than the sun and are fairly young. They're all about 10 to 15 million years old. Again, they're all related to each other. We think they are all born in kind of the same area of the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. So they're all about the same distance. They're all somewhere between 300 and 350 light years from the Earth. Now the fourth main star in this constellation, the top of the cross, is actually not associated with these stars. It just happens to be in the same part of the sky that we see it. So it's called Gamma Crucis. And Gamma Crucis is actually a yellow to orange giant star. It's slightly bigger than the sun. It's about 1.5 times the mass of the sun. It's a fairly old star. It's moving into the red giant stage, and it's the closest red giant to the Earth. It's only 88 light years away, but it's also not much more massive than the sun. It's an old star, so it's probably about the same age as the sun, probably older, could be maybe even up to 10 billion years old. Because of that, it has a very distinct orangish tint to it compared to the whitish bluish color of the other stars in the Southern Cross. Now the Southern Cross is its own constellation. It used to be part of a much bigger constellation known as Centaurus, the Centaur, but people felt that it was such a distinguishable asterism in and of its own, and so famous that it deserved to be its own constellation. So it officially got designated to be its own constellation, but it's a fairly small asterism, so it ends up being the smallest of all 88 official constellations in the night sky, but it is actually its own constellation. We're done with Sphinx here. So when you're ready to come out of Sphinx, then slowly begin to just lower your torso to the ground first. Maybe rest your head and your hands here. Just for a couple of breaths, just to let your spine rebound. Maybe your legs need some relief too, so you can maybe start to bring your feet away from the wall and start bobbing them gently back and forth here. But at some point, when you're ready, you can inch yourself forward to help release the legs here in wall swings. And again, you can be slow and deliberate about this, but at some point, slowly bring yourself up. And then we'll get set up for the next yin posture. This is a seated twist. So this is a seated twist known as Deer Pose. And I'm going to use a little bit of height for this posture. But you might find that you don't need any, so I'm going to take a couple of books and then sit on them with my legs out in front. Again, you may or may not need books here. And bend your left knee, bring your left ankle on the outside of your left hip. Draw your left knee away from your center line here. And you can experiment with this ankle closer or farther away from your hip here. I'm not very internally rotated, so my ankle has to stay close. Maybe this is inverse. If this is inverse, then you can come to a simple cross-legged seated position, and maybe that generates enough pressure, but that's an external rotation of the hip, not an internal rotation. This second knee, this right knee, bend it and bring the right heel in towards the center of the hip here. So this is what's called Deer Pose here. I have to sit up on a little bit of blocks because if I'm sitting on the floor, this sits bones lifts because of my limited internal rotation. You might have a different issue. Maybe you're limited in your external rotation and it's this hip that's lifting. So you have to experiment and play around with things here. We'll add a twist to this. So for a moment, generate a little bit of yang here. Go up tall through your torso, and then twist gently to the right. Just as far as you go, hands and arms can help here until you start feeling a little bit of resistance. When you get there, then you can stop and soften a bit. This is meant to be yin. So there is a little bit of a yang element here because this is a seated twist and it takes muscles to create the upright twist. But we can keep the muscle engagement to a minimum and just maintain the shape here. We'll go just for a couple minutes here in this twist here. If you don't like the twist, you can always keep just a nice neutral spine. Otherwise, come to the twist, your head and neck can stay neutral if you wish. But if you're wanting a little bit of a twist up in your neck, then you slowly move your gaze over that back shoulder. Again, you're determining your edge here. So a few breaths here as we stay for about another minute and a half or so. So not only is the Southern Cross bright and obvious and a good place to start for finding stars in the southern skies. By the way, there's a couple other bright stars in the constellation the Centaur, Alpha Centauri and Beta Centauri, which are right close by. And once you find the Southern Cross, you can find these stars too. There's also the False Cross on the other side of the real Southern Cross, made up of also fairly bright stars. But the Southern Cross itself exists right in the middle of the Milky Way. So if it's a very clear night, you'll see that nice milky band of light that arcs its way all the way around the sky. And the Southern Cross will be right in the middle of it, and there's some other beautiful features in and around the Southern Cross. There's what's known as the coal sack, and the coal sack is a very dark region of space right there in the Southern Cross. Now, it's not empty space. It's dark because it's a cloud of gas and dust that's blocking the starlight from the Milky Way. So it looks very black here. So just 3 more breaths in this twist. Maybe go a little bit deeper if you need to, or maybe go a little bit less deep if you're done with this twist here. Maybe you're kind of done with the hip opener. You'll know by your own sensations here. So maybe 1 more breath here. Slowly unwind the twist first. So unwind your neck, unwind your torso, maybe a little bit of a counter twist. And then slowly come out of hip opener, out of deer pose. So maybe lean back to release the legs, and you'll come back to seated, legs out in front. And you can kind of shake your legs out, point and flex your feet. But the best counter pose to deer pose is the other side of deer pose. So from here, bend your right knee, bring the right ankle on the outside of the right hip. Bend the left knee, bring the left heel on the inside of the hip. Adjust the knees accordingly. If you're wanting a more intense pose, start bringing your heels away from your hips. But if you start lifting up too high, you can already see that my sits bones has lifted here. So I gotta bring this heel back again. This is just pointing to the shape of my hip bones and my extent of my internal rotation here. You can stay here in deer pose, grow up nice and tall, or you can add the twist by gently twisting over, this time to the other side, to the left here. Head and neck can stay neutral. Or if it's okay with your head and your neck and you want a complete twist up in your cervical spine, then look over that back shoulder here. And then a gentle twist. It doesn't have to be a deep wrenching twist. You have plenty of time to do those deep wrenching twists in yang yoga classes here. This is just where your body kind of stops, and then you just maintain that stopping point, maintain that tension here. So a couple of minutes on this side, if that's appropriate, and if it's feeling like it's injurious, it's not helping, it's not useful, you come out early here. Besides the coal sack, besides this dark region of clouds and dust that block the light, there's also this brilliant open cluster of stars, that's right next to the star Mimosa. It's a small open cluster, so to the normal eye it kind of looks like just one fuzzy star, but it's actually this tight-knit grouped open group of stars that, when resolved in binoculars or small telescopes, turns into this beautiful, beautiful just grouping of stars, and it's known as the jewel box. And so it's very famous among amateur astronomers, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere. That's one of the first things they try to look at through their telescopes, is this jewel box here. So I have about 1 more minute here in this twist. Again, you're moving by feel. So if the twist is too deep, you give yourself permission to back off. If the twist is not deep enough, you give yourself permission to move a little bit more deeply, to re-establish your edge. This asterism, famous throughout cultures, including the indigenous cultures of the Southern Hemisphere. So among the things that were represented by the Southern Cross, there's some Aboriginal groups in Australia that believe the Southern Cross denoted a stingray. In the Inca tradition in South America, some of the Incan groups believed that the Southern Cross represented the Mother Llama. And in Southern Africa, some of the indigenous tribes there believed that the Southern Cross represented the tree of life. So 1 more breath here. And then slowly begin to release your torso. Again, you can do a counter twist here if you wish. Slowly make your way back to center, and then slowly come out of deer pose here. If that left your legs and your hips achy, you can kind of bob your legs around. Maybe do a few rounds of windshield wipers. And then from here, we're moving into our final posture, the practice, Shavasana here. You can take any form of Shavasana you wish, but since we're exploring inversions, and since we're exploring using the wall as a prop, I'm going to suggest legs up the wall for our final resting posture. So you can either do this posture without a prop underneath your hip, or if you prefer to have one, you can use a folded blanket, or do what I'm doing, is you can use a pillow here. And then the hardest part, again, of doing this is getting into the posture. So the easiest way is to sit sideways, scooch as close as you can up next to the wall, and then however many attempts it takes to lean back and swing your legs up the wall. You're trying to get your hips as close to the wall as you can get them. They don't have to touch. You're just getting them closer there, so you kind of use your arms and your torso and your legs to get close here. And then legs pretty straight, but the knees can be soft if they need to be here. And then maybe a little bit of inching around to make your torso comfortable, your neck, head comfortable, maybe tuck your chin. Arms are soft, maybe far enough away from your torso so that you can roll your arms open and your palms face up towards the ceiling. Collarbones are soft here. Everything feels rooted and stable underneath your torso. And then begin this idea of softening. So soften your face, soften your eyes, release your jaw. Notice the busyness of your mind. Let it be okay. Just notice. Notice the rise and the fall of your inhales, of your exhales. Notice how your rib cage changes shape every time you breathe here. So this is technically an inversion. This is a yin inversion. This is legs up the wall here. Just like dragonfly at the wall, just like ragdoll pose. And then allow yourself to be upside down. Allow yourself this new perspective. Soften your tongue. Release the skin around your mouth. Eyes can be open, they can be soft, or they can be closed. The skin around each ear is released. The muscle fiber around each eye socket is soft. The space in between your eyes, the third eye, is released. Nose is soft. Temple, your foreheads, the crown of your head released. Postpone being a human doing. Give yourself permission to be a human being. Have nowhere to go. Have nothing to do for the next few minutes. Allow yourself to simply exist and to simply breathe. Collarbones are soft. Shoulders are stable. Release your right arm, right palm, right fingers. Left arm, left palm, and left fingers. Bring your attention to your fingertips. Both hands. And see if you can notice that light tingling of energy. That prana that exists in the tips of all of your fingers. Both hands at the same time. Meanwhile, your torso is soft. Relax your rib cage, your abdomen, soften your hips, thighs, your knees, your shins, the ankles, the heels, the soles and tops of your feet. Release and relax all of your toes and see if you can notice your energy, your prana, in the tip of each toe, both feet, left and right. Release, relax, and surrender your body-mind 100%. Visualize yourself lying in a savanna field of soft grass next to a small glen, a forest of trees. It's getting dark, the sun has set, and the sky is clear. And as it gets darker, the stars begin to appear, the brighter ones first, and what you notice is high above you. You see these 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 very bright stars kind of sitting there in the middle of this milky arch of the Milky Way. And you can allow those little soft, cool points of light to create a deeper sense of peace and of calm. Begin to deepen your breath. At some point you can make small motions with fingers and with toes. Then expand that motion into hands and into feet. Start making little motions with legs and with arms. If you need to, you can gently rock your head from side to side. As you make other little motions, at some point, slowly bend your knees, bring your feet to the wall. You can even gently press yourself back away from the wall. And then very slowly, deliberately, lower your knees over to one side. When you get there, stay there for a moment, for a few breaths, cultivating a sense of deep gratitude for your yin practice, but also a deep gratitude for you, your unique embodiment in the universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're ready, gently bring yourself up into a comfortable seat. When you get there, find a feeling of stability in your lower body, the connection that it makes with the floor, with the earth. Maybe grow your spine nice and neutral, just so that you have some space to breathe. Bring your hands together in front of your heart. I'll end practice with chanting Om. You can either join in, or you can just listen to my voice. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.